They said he became aggressive. They said the 65-year-old man lost his balance during a routine check. They said the bruises came from the sidewalk. But the truth, still buried inside a government dash camera, told a far darker story. And the ICE officer responsible, Agent Cole Mercer, had no idea that the quiet black man bleeding in the back of his transport vehicle was about to become the most dangerous mistake of his life. Every morning at exactly 6:45 a.m., Leonard, or Lenny, Brooks stepped on to the front porch of his modest brick home on Magnolia Street, tucked into Houston's historic Fifth Ward. He did it the same way every day, slow, deliberate, one hand gripping the railing his late wife had insisted on after his knee surgery. 65 years old, Vietnam-era Army mechanic, retired Port of Houston dock worker, church deacon for over 20 years, a man who believed routine was respect for God, for life, for himself. That morning, the Houston air already hung heavy, thick with heat and humidity even before the sun fully climbed. The scent of magnolia blossoms mixed with exhaust and distant barbecue smoke. Lenny wore neatly pressed khakis and a white short-sleeved button-down, a chipped ceramic mug warming his palms. He stood quietly, listening to the neighborhood wake, buses hissing, a barking dog, a neighbor's radio humming low gospel. He didn't hear the vehicle until it stopped. Black SUV, federal plates, windows dark as secrets. The letters ICE was stamped on the side like a verdict. Inside sat Agent Cole Mercer, 32 years old, newly reassigned, jaw clenched with unresolved anger. His transfer from a border unit came after complaints that never quite stuck. Houston was supposed to be easy, urban, busy, anonymous. People complied here. Mercer stepped out, boots heavy against cracked pavement, sunglasses already in place, though the sun was barely up. "Leonard Brooks," he called, voice sharp and impatient. Lenny blinked, surprised. He took a slow sip of coffee. "Yes, sir?" "Step off the porch." Lenny set the mug down carefully. "May I ask what this is about?" Mercer walked closer, eyes scanning the house like it didn't belong to him. "There's a discrepancy in your residency records. Need to verify your status." Lenny's brow furrowed. "I was born at Jefferson Davis Hospital, 1949. I've lived in Houston my whole life. My birth certificate's inside." Mercer smirked. "We'll see." Something tightened in Lenny's chest. Not fear, but recognition, the kind you never forget once it's introduced to you. "I'm not leaving my porch without my shoes, and I won't be handled like a criminal in front of my own house." That's when Mercer snapped. "I didn't ask for your opinion," Mercer barked, grabbing Lenny's arm. The grip was immediate, hard, unnecessary. "Hey, easy," Lenny said, wincing. "You don't need to—" "Stop resisting," Mercer said, already rehearsing his report. Lenny stumbled as Mercer yanked him forward. His bad knee betrayed him. His shoulder struck the porch column before his body hit the concrete. Pain detonated through him, sharp, blinding. His glasses slid across the walkway and shattered. "Lord," Lenny groaned, trying to push himself up. Mercer stood over him, breathing hard. "You should have complied." "I didn't do anything wrong," Lenny said, voice shaking. "I served this country." Mercer laughed, cold, dismissive. "Everybody says that." Curtains twitched. A neighbor stepped outside, phone already raised. "That man lives there," she shouted. "Go inside," Mercer warned, resting his hand near his weapon, not drawing it, just enough to silence the block. Metal cuffs clamped down on Lenny's wrists, biting into swollen joints. He gasped as Mercer forced him upright. As he was shoved into the back of the SUV, blood filled his mouth. "Please," Lenny whispered, "let me make one call." Mercer slammed the door. "You'll get one if you earn it." The engine roared to life. and as the vehicle pulled away from Magnolia Street, Leonard Brooks stared at his reflection in the dark glass, older, broken, bleeding. He whispered one name, not a lawyer, not a pastor, my son. Agent Mercer didn't hear him, and that silence was about to cost far more than a badge.
The Houston ICE Processing Center didn't look like a jail. That was the lie of it. No bars on the outside, no razor wire you could see from the street, just a wide, gray federal building squatting behind a chain-link fence, quiet and indifferent, like it had nothing to prove. Inside, it was cold on purpose. Leonard Brooks felt it the moment Agent Mercer dragged him through the metal doors. The air conditioning blasted against his sweat-soaked shirt, making his injured shoulder scream. His wrists were still cuffed behind his back, circulation cut off, fingers tingling and numb. "Walk," Mercer ordered. Lenny limped. Every step sent a sharp reminder through his knee and up his spine. He kept his head up anyway. 65 years teaches you that dignity is sometimes the only thing nobody can take unless you hand it over. They passed fluorescent-lit hallways, blank walls, cameras in every corner. No windows, no clocks. Time didn't live here. At intake, Mercer shoved Lenny into a molded plastic chair. "Name?" the processing officer said without looking up. "Leonard Brooks." "Country of origin?" "United States of America." The officer paused, finally glanced up, then looked to Mercer. "Run it," Mercer said flatly. They fingerprinted him like he was cargo, took his belt, his watch, his wallet. When Lenny tried to explain his shoulder, how it felt loose, wrong, the medic never came. "Sit tight," Mercer said, already typing. Lenny watched him from across the room. Young, clean uniform, confident, the kind of man who'd never been told no in a way that stuck. Mercer's report wrote itself. Subject became belligerent, refused lawful orders, lost balance during escort. The truth sat 10 feet away, bruised and shaking, and completely ignored. They placed Lenny in a holding cell barely bigger than a walk-in closet, a steel bench, concrete floor, cold that crept into the bones. He sat slowly, guarding his shoulder, breathing through the pain. This wasn't his first time being treated like this. Not really. He remembered 1968, standing in uniform while people called him names he didn't repeat in church. Remembered coming home from Vietnam to a country that didn't want him, but still wanted his labor. He had survived worse, but this hurt different. A younger detainee across the way whispered, "You okay, OG?" Lenny nodded once. "I will be." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here. Finally, Mercer returned, keys jangling. "You're being processed for further detention until we verify your status. My status been verified my whole life. I'm an American citizen." Mercer leaned closer. "You people always say that." That did it. Lenny stood slowly, despite the pain, and met Mercer's eyes. "I earned this country, same as anyone." Mercer stared back, jaw tightening. "Sit down." Lenny didn't move. "Sit down." The silence stretched. Then Mercer smiled, thin and cruel. "Put him back," he told the guard. "He wants to play tough." They shoved Lenny back onto the bench. His shoulder gave a sickening shift. He cried out despite himself. That night, when the building finally went quiet, Lenny realized something worse than the pain. No one knew where he was. He bowed his head, whispered a prayer his mother taught him. Then he remembered the number. Not written down, never saved in his phone, burned into memory after his son told him, "Dad, only use this if you really need me." His hands shook as the guard finally allowed him one call. The phone was old. The line crackled. Lenny dialed. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice, calm, precise, not human at first. "Secure federal line. Identify." "This is Leonard Brooks. Authorization Delta 71. Father." There was a pause. Then the voice changed. "Sir, Please stay on the line. A click, a breath, then, Daddy? The single word broke something in Lenny's chest, and 1,400 miles away, a man who commanded men and machines of war stood up very slowly and said, "Who touched you?" 1,400 miles away, the room went silent. Not the uncomfortable kind, the dangerous kind. Leonard Brooks couldn't see it, but his son had just stood up in a windowless briefing room inside a federal complex outside Arlington, Virginia. No windows, no flags, just steel, screens, and men who decided things that never made the news. "Daddy?" the voice repeated, steady but different now, sharper. Lenny swallowed hard. "Son, I'm in an ICE facility in Houston. They say I'm being held for verification. I'm hurt." There was a pause. "How hurt?" "My shoulder's out," Lenny said softly. "Knees acting up. They threw me down." Another pause, longer this time. Agent Mercer across the room didn't notice anything. He was leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, convinced this was already over. On the other end of the line, Lenny's son closed his eyes. "What's your location?" the son asked. "I don't know," Lenny admitted. "No windows, cold building, off I-10, I think." "That's enough," his son said. Behind him, men in tailored suits and military uniforms exchanged looks. Someone quietly locked the door. "Daddy," the son continued, voice calm in a way Lenny recognized from childhood. "I need you to listen. Don't argue with them anymore. Don't sign anything. If they move you, say nothing. You understand?" "Yes, sir," Lenny said automatically. A faint smile touched the son's mouth. "That's my father." The line clicked dead. Back in Houston, Lenny lowered the phone slowly. Agent Mercer looked up. "You done?" "Yes," Lenny said. "I am." Mercer laughed. "Good, because this isn't going anywhere." He was wrong. 30 minutes later, the first sign came. Not loud, not dramatic, just wrong. The computer system at the front desk froze, then rebooted, then locked. A supervisor frowned. "That's odd." At the same time, Mercer's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. Then the landline rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, the shift supervisor answered. "Yes, this is ICE Processing Houston." He listened, his face drained of color. "Yes, sir?" "Understood, sir." He hung up slowly. "What is it?" Mercer asked. The supervisor didn't answer. He was already dialing another number. His hands shook. In Washington, D.C., phones were lighting up. In Houston, the airspace above the detention center quietly changed classification. No announcement, no sirens, just a subtle reroute. Inside the holding cell, Lenny sat with his hands folded, eyes closed, breathing through the pain. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew his son, and he trusted him. Agent Mercer finally noticed the shift. 2 men in dark suits arrived without badges visible. They didn't check in. They didn't smile. They walked straight to the supervisor's office. 10 minutes later, the supervisor came out sweating. "Mercer," he snapped, "what exactly happened this morning?" Mercer scoffed. "Routine pickup. Subject resisted." The supervisor stared at him. "That man you detained is a U.S. citizen." "So he says." "No," the supervisor said. "So the Department of Defense says." Mercer laughed. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking." Another phone rang, then another. Then Mercer's phone buzzed again, same unknown number. This time he answered. "Agent Mercer," a calm voice said. "This is Assistant Director Harlan with Homeland Security Oversight." Mercer straightened. "Sir, we have reviewed preliminary footage. You are ordered to stand down and cease interaction with detainee Leonard Brooks." Mercer frowned. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that his son just activated a level of oversight you will never outrun." The line went dead. Mercer felt it then. Fear. In the hallway outside Lenny's cell, boots approached, but these weren't ICE issue. Different rhythm. Heavier. The door opened. A man in a crisp civilian suit stood there, flanked by 2 uniformed military police. "Mr. Brooks," the man said respectfully, "I'm here to ensure your safety." Lenny looked up slowly. Am I being released? Not yet, but you are no longer alone. Down the hall, Mercer watched from glass as medics finally rushed to Lenny's side. For the first time that day, no one was laughing. Mercer whispered to himself, who the hell is his son? And in a secured facility outside D.C., a man who had spent his life not being seen put on his jacket. Get me a plane. Houston, now.
The first thing Agent Cole Mercer noticed was how quiet the building became. Not the normal late shift quiet. This was different. The televisions in the common area went dark at the same time. The computer terminals stopped responding. Even the air conditioning seemed to lower its hum, as if the building itself was holding its breath. "Why are the systems down?" Mercer asked, trying to keep his voice steady. No one answered him. Two black SUVs rolled into the secure lot without sirens, without lights. They didn't announce themselves at the gate. The gate simply opened. From the security cameras, before they froze, Mercer saw 4 men step out. Not ICE, not local law enforcement. Their posture gave them away. They moved like men who had never needed permission. And then the 5th man stepped out. He wasn't in uniform. Mid-40s, broad-shouldered, calm in a way Mercer had never learned. He wore a dark jacket, plain slacks, no visible weapon, because he didn't need one. Inside the building, the supervisor swallowed hard. "He's here," the supervisor whispered. Mercer frowned. "Who?" The answer came without words. Leonard Brooks felt it before he saw it. The medic had just finished strapping his shoulder when the hallway fell silent. No radios, no footsteps, just a presence approaching. The door opened. The man who stepped inside looked nothing like the soldiers Lenny remembered from his army days. No shouting, no stiffness, just strength at rest. The man's eyes softened when they landed on him. "Daddy," the man said. Lenny exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Son." The room seemed too small for them both. The man knelt on the cold floor, ignoring the medics, ignoring everyone. "I'm sorry it took me this long," his son said quietly. "You came. That's enough." Behind them, the men in suits watched without speaking. One of them stepped forward. "Sir," he said to Lenny's son, "we have full control of the facility." The son nodded once. "Good." He stood slowly and turned. "Who touched him?" he asked. No anger, no raised voice. That made it worse. Agent Mercer was brought into the room 2 minutes later. His confidence was gone now, his swagger replaced by stiff shoulders and shallow breaths. "This is a misunderstanding," Mercer began. The son looked at him like he was studying a diagram. "You put hands on my father. Explain." Mercer opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "We have the footage, the reports, the medical assessment. You lied." "I followed procedure," Mercer snapped, desperation cracking his voice. "He resisted." The son stepped closer, not threatening, just close enough. "My father fixed engines in a war zone before you were born. He doesn't resist, he endures." Mercer's knees trembled. The man in the suit cleared his throat. "Agent Mercer, effective immediately, you are suspended pending federal investigation." Mercer shook his head. "You can't—" "You're done," the son said, just like that. Lenny was lifted gently into a wheelchair. For the first time since morning, someone moved him like he mattered. As they wheeled him toward the exit, Mercer watched from behind glass. "Daddy," the son said softly, walking beside him. "They won't hurt you again." Lenny looked up at him. "I know." Outside, the Houston night was thick and warm. The city lights glowed like nothing had happened. But inside the building, careers were ending. Files were being copied. Phones were ringing in Washington. And Agent Mercer stood alone, realizing something too late. Power didn't shout. Power showed up, looked you in the eye, and made you irrelevant. By morning, Houston knew. Not all the details, those would come later, but enough. Enough to understand that something had gone very wrong inside a federal building that was supposed to protect the law, not twist it. Leonard Brooks woke up in a private hospital room overlooking the city skyline. Sunlight poured in through wide windows. His shoulder was stabilized, his knee wrapped, his glasses replaced with a temporary pair that sat crooked on his face. For the first time in 24 hours, he felt warm. His son sat beside the bed, jacket folded over the chair, sleeves rolled up like he planned to stay a while. "They say I'll need surgery," Lenny said quietly. "We'll take care of it," his son replied. "Everything." Lenny studied him for a long moment. "You didn't burn the city down, did you?" His son almost smiled. "No, sir." "Good," Lenny said. "I raised you better than that." Agent Cole Mercer was not allowed to leave the ICE facility that night. By sunrise, his badge was in an evidence bag. By noon, his name was on a federal suspension notice. By evening, the video was everywhere. No edits, no commentary, just the truth. America watched a 65-year-old black man get dragged off his porch in Houston for existing too calmly, too confidently, too black. The statements came fast. ICE promised reform. Oversight committees demanded answers. Politicians spoke carefully. But it wasn't their words that mattered. It was Leonard Brooks's silence. 2 weeks later, Lenny stood at a podium outside his church in the 5th Ward. His arm was still in a sling. His voice was steady. "I don't want revenge," he said. "I want correction." Behind him stood his son, not introduced, not named, just present. "I served this country, not because it was perfect, but because I believed it could be better." The crowd, young and old, stood listening. "I don't want another man treated the way I was, not my neighbor, not a stranger, not even the man who hurt me." Somewhere, watching from a small apartment, Cole Mercer heard that line and felt something collapse inside his chest. Because mercy is heavier than anger when you don't deserve it. Mercer's trial never made prime time. No spectacle, no shouting, just charges. Civil rights violations, falsifying reports, abuse of authority. He pleaded guilty. He never looked at the gallery. He never looked at Leonard Brooks. And when the judge asked if he had anything to say, Mercer shook his head. Some men only find their voice when it's too late. Months passed. The Magnolia Street porch was repaired, the railing reinforced, wind chimes hung where broken glasses once lay. Every morning at 6:45 a.m., Leonard Brooks stepped outside again. Slower now, more careful, still dignified. Sometimes his son sat with him, sometimes he didn't, but the porch remained, and so did the lesson. That power doesn't belong to the loudest voice, that age is not weakness, that dignity, once seen, cannot be unseen, and that some men don't need to raise their fists to change the world. They just need to stand. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the people who stood before us and the responsibility we carry forward. Like, subscribe, and share if you believe dignity is worth defending. Until next time, stay safe and stand tall.